You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important and useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And we have another great show for you this week. But before I introduce our special guest today, I just want to thank everybody for all their support, sharing our podcast with family members and friends. We've grown, our listeners are growing each and every day, and it's because of you. So I want to just thank you for that. Many of you, of course, listen to our podcast on our free app, which is the Boomers Today app that you could get on your Android phone or on your iPhone. Many of you go to our website at boomerstodayradio.com. They go on Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. So a lot of different ways to listen, and we really appreciate your support. I do know that so many of you listen to our shows because we have great guests, and we're not going to disappoint you today at all. So we have with us Sylvia Green. Sylvia, over the last decade, has worked with seniors in different settings. She has worked as a social service coordinator in a skilled nursing facility and held a weekly dementia caregiver support group. Most recently, she obtained her personal care home administrator license and worked as an executive director at a personal care home. Knowing that many are unaware of the eligibility, policies, and process surrounding Medicaid, Sylvia spent a significant amount of time learning about Medicaid in all 50 states and started her own Medicaid planning company, Sensible Senior Planning. Sylvia, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Frank.
Yeah, so I'm going to start out with a question that I know we have discussed many times on our show. However, we can't discuss it enough. So it's really important, and I think people generally get the two types of government programs confused, and that's Medicare and Medicaid. All right. Maybe you could just give us a quick overview on some of the key differences, and I know we're going to then dive further into the Medicaid, but maybe you could give us an overview of the difference between those two.
Definitely. So Medicare is a medical insurance, and it's provided to people that are over the age of 65. It is not dependent on income or assets. There is a premiums and deductibles that you have to pay for Medicare. The other eligibility also, besides for being 65 or older, is also if you are on disability for 2 years, you can qualify for Medicare. However, like I said, it has deductibles, it has premiums, and essentially it's a medical insurance. Medicaid is a program, it's a healthcare program, and it assists families and individuals whose income and resources are limited. It covers almost always it covers medical expenses fully. At times there will be copays. So that, and for Medicaid, it does not matter what age you are or necessarily how long you've been disabled. It just matters if you qualify for resources and your income. We'll get, and that's the general overview for Medicaid. Like you said, we'll get into specifics of Medicaid for different programs of Medicaid. There are specific qualifications and medical necessities that you do have to meet, but this is just, basic, the main difference between Medicare and Medicaid.
Great. If I can add something also, Medicare is a federal program. All right. So regardless of the state you are in, the basic Medicare program is run by the federal government, right? And now there might be specifics, differences state to state as relates to the Medicare, I guess, supplement program. Would that be the right term? Medicare
Yes, there's
supplement?
Medicare Advantage and Medicare Supplement.
Right. So that could be a little different. Now, Medicaid, okay, and Civi, you know better than I, so tell me if I'm correct on this. But Medicaid is a combination of federal and state funding. So that's why
Correct.
with Medicaid, there could be differences state by state, right?
Yes, exactly. You are 100% accurate on that. Medicaid, the regulations and the policies are different across all 50 states.
Great. Yeah. And so, and you actually have become knowledgeable on these programs in all 50 states, which is amazing. You know, there's a lot to know.
Yeah, it took me many, many, many months and a lot of studying. And, I am thankful that I do now have that knowledge of how Medicaid does work and operate in all 50 states. I do also have some team members that may be more familiar and more of an expert in specific states than I am, but I do, I am familiar though with the policies and have the resources for all 50 states.
That's great. That's great.
Yes.
So let's dive into Medicaid a little bit more, and maybe you could just talk about Medicaid and the different programs, because that's your area of expertise.
Yes. So Medicaid, when a lot of people, when they hear the word Medicaid, they very often think about Medicaid just covers two things. Number one, community Medicaid. So where an individual is living in, they're living at home in a community. Again, it doesn't matter the age, maybe they're 30, 40 years old and they lost their job, their income is limited. They also have limited assets and they need health insurance. So there's Medicaid that can assist in covering health insurance, and it's health insurance for individuals that are living in communities. The other Medicaid that people hear most often about is long-term care Medicaid. Long-term care Medicaid covers, there's different parts of the long-term care Medicaid. It covers nursing homes. There are parts of long-term care Medicaid and different waiver programs that cover assisted living facilities as well. Then there are also Medicaid programs that can cover for home health care, and that can cover for adult daycare center as well. When I say it covers long-term care, I know I said that initially when I say that, for me, I'm just so used to the lingo, but
Right.
when I say that, I mean skilled nursing facilities.
Right.
So it will cover for an individual to live in a nursing home.
Right.
That's the biggest one. And then, like I said, there are different waiver programs as well that covers for home health care, assisted living, and adult daycare as well.
And when you say waiver, I think what is meant is an exception to the rule, right?
Yes.
That's what we mean by waiver, right?
Right. So there are waiver programs, and the waiver programs are kind of an exception to the rule as to what it would cover, because usually it would just cover a skilled nursing facility, a nursing home, but there are waiver programs that will go ahead and cover other programs and needs for individuals as well.
And that could be different state by state. I know I'm in California. I know you're based in Colorado, and you spend time in New York, and those three states in and of itself are different as it relates to what's covered outside of skilled nursing, or because I think people might be interested in going, well, my father's going to need to be in assisted living, all right, and boy, if I get him on Medicaid, it will cover it, and that's not necessarily true.
Right. So it is state specific. It also is facility specific. So for example, in Pennsylvania, no assisted living facilities take Medicaid at this time. So if you do require Medicaid and you do require the, medical assistance, typically individuals go into a skilled nursing facility. In other states such as Colorado, there is an assisted living waiver program. So assisted living facilities have the capability of accepting Medicaid. Mm-hmm. However, many assisted living facilities still won't accept Medicaid patients. That's primarily because the reimbursement from Medicaid is very different than private pay, significantly less. So often assisted living facilities won't accept Medicaid. And then the assisted livings that do, they usually set aside maybe 5 beds, or sometimes you'll get 10 beds they'll set aside for Medicaid patients. So or for, I should say, patients that are on Medicaid. So typically the wait list is a very, very long wait list. So although Medicaid does cover assisted living, it is definitely, it's difficult to get your loved one into a facility.
Yeah,
When they're on Medicaid.
the analogy that I've given to families on that is, because I think people can relate to this, that many times if they're flying out somewhere, they're going on a flight and they're booking their flight, and they literally, could, book that flight, and obviously there's different prices, for that flight. And there may be availability on the plane, but there might not be availability at that really low fare. And I think people relate to that because they deal with that all the time. All right. So you could get on a flight and say, what did you pay? And you could have huge differentials of what people paid. Would you say that that's a good analogy as it relates to a Medicaid bed?
I love that, Frank, and I think I'm going to start using that.
Yeah. So I came from the travel industry, so I always think of an analogy back to that. So the process, I don't know any other way to explain it. It's a bear, right? I mean, it's to go through this for, we always talk about in our industry, our advice to families is don't do this alone. I'm talking about everything, anything related to selection of an assisted living or just getting the proper care for a loved one. Don't try to do this alone. There's so much to know. And that goes for this too. I mean, people that try to do this alone could make some mistakes, and that could be a problem for them in getting approval on Medicaid, right?
Definitely. I will say, so just to be clear, when it comes to community Medicaid, again, every state is different. There are some states that are super simple process. You go online, you fill out an application, you get approved immediately. And then there are other states that are very complicated and similar to applying for long-term care Medicaid. But what we're going to, what I'm going to speak about, and when I refer to Medicaid moving forward, I'm going to be referring to specifically long-term care Medicaid. So Medicaid for skilled nursing facilities or assisted living or home care or adult daycare. I do just wanted to make that clear because there is a significant difference between the application process for both of those Medicaids. But for long-term care Medicaid, the process is so daunting. There's a lot of documentation that has to be collected. You do have to provide, proof of citizenship, proof of social security number, proof of Medicare, marital status. If someone's widowed, you do have to provide, the death certificate of your loved one. You do have to provide, any income. So you have to provide 5-year bank statements for any of the bank accounts that you had within 5 years. Even if, let's say, an individual closed a bank account 3 years ago, they still have to get bank statements for the 2 years prior. So anything within the last 5 years, for bank statements, if there's IRAs, 401ks, you have to provide statements for that. You also, if someone owns a house, they have to provide proof of residence for the house. And, then of course they have to provide it as to how much have they been paying over the last 5 years, what were the bills, just so that there is a trace for Medicaid to be able to see what has been done over the last 5 years, what money has been coming out, what money has been going in. They want to know all of that because of that. That's all going to pertain to eligibility. So, which we'll get into, that will pertain as to if someone will be approved for Medicaid or not. Of course, so gathering all that information in and of itself is very daunting, which is why, of course, there are Medicaid planners out there to assist with gathering the information. And then there's the submission process, right? So actually completing the Medicaid application and submitting it to Medicaid. Right. You hope, right? You submit it to Medicaid and they'll give you an answer. Hopefully the answer is yes or no. What 90% of the time happens is that you submit an application and Medicaid now that's kind of your case now is open, and they will converse with you back and forth. So they will come to you and say, they want to know exactly what was this $300 that was withdrawn, what was this $300 that was deposited. You know, we don't have the specific insurance premiums. We don't have a paperwork from the insurance company. You need to provide that. So Medicaid comes back and they really do a deep dive and investigate everything within the last 5 years so that they can understand.
Gotcha.
And see. Yeah.
So we're going to just take a real quick break here just to recognize our sponsor. And we come back. Certainly, I'm going to have you share with everybody how they could get in touch with you. But also, we're going to talk about the perception out there that you really have to, you have to be pretty much out of money to get approved on Medicaid. And that isn't totally true, right? So we're going to talk about that as well. So I want to just remind everybody that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, an elder care consulting organization that has a national network of professionally trained and experienced local advisors to assist families in determining the right path for your loved ones. They'll discuss various long-term care options, whether it's in-home care, assisted living, memory care, nursing, or if you just need an advocate to get advice from, a local Senior Care Authority advisor can help you now. So for a free 30-minute consultation with an advisor right in your area, contact Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you could go directly to their website at www.seniorcareauthority.com, and you can find an advisor in your area. So we're back with Sylvia Green, who is the founder of Sensible Senior Planning, and she is a Medicaid planner nationally, can work with you in states all over the country. So Sylvia, maybe let's just start out so people know how can they get a hold of you? What's the best way to do that?
Definitely. So the best way to get a hold of me is either on my cell phone, which the phone number is 610-972-9400, or at my office phone, which is 855-975-2664. I can also be reached through email at info, at sensibleseniorplanning.com. Or you can find more information, and you can find our contact information as well on our website, which is www.sensibleseniorplanning.com.
Great.
And like Frank had mentioned, we do service 50 states. Either myself or one of our representatives will be able to assist.
Great. Yeah, you can't be doing this all yourself, that's for sure.
No. And the good thing too also is that we do offer what you had mentioned as well as a free consultation. So even if someone just has questions about Medicaid and kind of wants to pick brain to learn a little bit more, we do offer a free consultation. So you can always give us a call too.
Great. So I think there's a perception out there that, people do understand generally the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. When they hear about Medicaid, they think, well, it's really for people who are just have no assets, they are out of money, and they need care. That's the perception out there. And talk to us a little bit about that for people who maybe need care, but also could have significant assets. Talk to us about that.
Yes. So for long-term care Medicaid, one of the big qualifications that people don't actually always know is needed is for your medical necessity. You do have to be medically necessary to receive. Sorry, it has to be. You have to require assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living, also known as ADL, in order to be approved for long-term care Medicaid. What that means is, let's say the individual requires assistance with medications and with showers, or an individual requires assistance with going to using the restroom or dressing. So as long as they require assistance with 2 or more ADLs, then from a medical standpoint, you can be approved for Medicaid. Now there is, like you had mentioned, the financials standpoint. So in every state it fluctuates. There is a asset limit. When you look at Medicaid black and white, they say there is an asset limit in order for you to be qualified for Medicaid. In some states, such as in New York, it's 15,000, around 15,000. In Pennsylvania, it's around 8,000. And most of the other states, it is around $2,000. So people hear that, and like you said, they hear, okay, we can only have $2,000 of assets. I'm definitely not eligible for Medicaid. I have $100,000, so I'm not going to even worry about that. I'm just going to spend down and pay the nursing home until I reach the asset limit of $2,000. Now, first, when I say assets, that includes, like I had mentioned, that includes 401ks, most of the time IRAs. There are some that are accepted. It includes most of the time life insurance policies. There are some that are exempted as well. And then, of course, checkings and savings account, extra properties. In most states is a second home. In some states, an asset is also considered your first home. So those are all considered assets. Now, there are many, many ways to be able to either preserve assets, so to save some of your assets, and there are other ways to spend down your assets other than paying the nursing home. So this is when we really work very closely, and we contract with a number of attorneys, and to assist in preservation of assets and spending down. For example, this week, I had a case. There was a individual. He just inherited. The client just inherited about $300,000 from his wife, who passed away recently. He's progressing in his dementia, and he's in a nursing home facility. He has all these assets, and he really wanted to pass it on to his children. So he wanted to look at an idea of what can he do for preserving of some of those assets. Him, and I should say his sister, who is his power of attorney. They were initially told that they just have to pay the nursing home. Giving us a call, we got our team involved. We got a attorney who specializes as well in this for that specific state. It's New York. And the plan that we came up with is a promissory note. So that's where all of the money, all of that for $300,000, he had additional as well from himself, goes into what's called a promissory note. And long story short, we are going to be saving them around 60% of his total assets. And then he's going to be on Medicaid. So that's huge, because usually within the last 5 years, right, they do a 5-year look back Medicaid, black and white, you can't transfer assets, you can't gift away any assets. Again, when you work with individuals that specialize in this, you definitely realize that there are ways to save some assets. Promissory note is specific to only certain states, but there are other things that you can do in other states, such as Medicaid compliant annuities. So, that's where there's an annuity where you make all of your assets an income. And essentially, you can be approved for Medicaid that way. And that really works, which I know we'll get to, for spousal cases, because you have all these assets, they're all gone. Your loved one who's still living at home needs some money. So instead of having to give all your assets and pay it to the nursing home, there's ways to save it for the spouse. So what I'm trying to get to is that there's so many options.
Right.
Setting up irrevocable burial funds. There's so many options that people really, it's important to consult with individuals if you need Medicaid and you have some assets and you really want to preserve some of your assets.
So, and I've seen this happen before, whereby, again, if people who are not familiar with this, try to take it in their own hands, and they take mom or dad's money and move it from their savings account over to the adult children's savings account, saying, oh, I'm just going to move it over, and they start moving funds around. That could really come back and bite them as it relates to the getting approved. Am I right?
Yes, that would be called gifting. Yes. Yeah. And what would typically happen is that you would have to pay back that money, or Medicaid says, we won't approve you until you pay the facility this amount of money. And every state is different to how much Medicaid says you have to pay back.
Right. So what suggestions do you give to people on where do they start? on this? I mean, sometimes, and I know we deal with this a lot, in our organization. Sometimes we're dealing with crisis situations, and everything has to move real quick, which I know you deal with as well. But if somebody were to really think this through and try to plan this out right, what would be your recommendations to our listeners who might be confronted with a loved one in their family to start planning correctly for this?
First piece of advice would say, don't take any advice from social media. A lot of people talk about the personal experiences, or try to give advice in social media and don't realize that there's so much information really to be known. So I say the first thing I would say is definitely don't do too much digging into social media and Google as well. There is information out there. Some is inaccurate and some doesn't really give enough detail to where I would consider it, reliable, because there's just so much. So I would say definitely the first thing that you should do, not doing those other two things, would be contacting a local Medicaid planner in the area. Or, like I said, we do service 50 states, so definitely we're here for any free consultation. You can give us a call. If I don't have the answers, I will definitely have someone that does, and I will be able to, can help advise.
Yeah. So one thing I just want to get in, because we only probably just have about a minute left or so, but when you are, I know you kind of alluded to it, but maybe you could give us a little more specifics when you're dealing with a spouse, a couple, and maybe only one of them needs assistance with Medicaid and the other one doesn't. How does that work as it relates to their assets and everything?
Medicaid does allow the spouse who's living in the community a certain amount of assets. Usually it's around $120,000. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's a little bit less. There are many, many ways to be able to preserve assets and give the spouse in the community enough money to be able to sustain enough assets and enough income, taking some of the other spouses in the nursing home's income as well. So I will say the one, quickly, that when there is a spouse who's living in the community and there's one that's in a nursing home, the spouse in the community is not going to lose all of their money if you get professional help. And, I recommend getting that guidance.
Great. Sylvia Green, sensibleseniorplanning.com, right? Did I get it right? sensibleseniorplanning.com?
You got it.
All right, great. Check it out. A lot of great information on the site. Sylvia, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers today.
Thank you for having me again, Frank.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.